Hi, my name is Melissa Sparks, and this is my poetry unit video for Miss Straub for English Composition 2. And today I'm going to be talking about a poem called Richard Cory, and it is by Edwin Arlington Robinson. And I'm going to read the poem first, and then we'll just kind of pick it apart from there. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from sole to crown, clean-favored and imperially slim. And he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still he fluttered pulses when he said good morning, and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything, to make us wish that we were in his place. And so we worked, and waited for the light, and went without the meat, and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. Whew! That's some deep stuff right there. Let's kind of analyze what's going on with this poem here, shall we? So basically, in the beginning, he goes to town every single day. He says good morning to everybody, no matter their status or anything like that, whether they're rich or poor or whatnot. He says good morning. Everybody loves him. You know, everybody wants to be him because they know that he is rich and they want to be at that status. But in the end, they all go home. They work all day until the nighttime when the lamps come on, which means the light. And they go home, but they can't afford meat because that is how poor that they are. And meat was always kind of one of those things back then that was kind of expensive. If you could afford meat, you were rich. Or sometimes if you could afford butter, you were rich. You know, like there's not really anything wrong at first. You know, it's just people living their everyday lives. The second part of the poem, he was always quietly arrayed. He was always human when he talked, which meant, to me, it means that he didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't sugarcoat what it meant to be a human being. He talked to people at their level, and he talked with them and not to them. One personification I noticed was the calm summer night, which meant that there was nothing disturbing the town. There was nothing going on that night. It was calm, it was serene. Everybody was having dinner. Everybody was, you know, going to bed and stuff like that. With it being quiet and everything, somebody could very well hear the gunshot from the gun that Richard used to shoot himself. So this poem has a lot of symbolism. It has a lot of deeper meanings to it, a lot of connotations. One of the first things that I noticed was that it would talk about Richard as a person who was rich and wealthy. He glittered when he walked, which meant he had a lot of jewelry on, or maybe some necklaces or something. You know, the clothing that he wore, he was always clean, always well put together. He was able to attain a higher education when most people during that time weren't able to do that. Most couldn't even finish high school or elementary school. It really showed that a person who can be well put together can also have internal issues. You never know what that person's going to go through, or is going through, so to speak. I always want to say hyperbole, and I don't think that's the correct term, hyperbole. He glittered when he walked. You know, literally, people can't walk down the street looking like a glitter bomb, but, you know, it's an exaggeration of sorts. Everything is an exaggeration of, you know, who he is as a person. To give some examples, he was quietly arrayed, clean-favored, imperially slim. You know, all these different adjectives and things are used to describe him as greater than how he actually is, because in the end he is just a human being that has issues and his own internal struggles, and the people of the town did not see that because he put on such a show, such an array of, you know, oh hey, this is who I am, good morning, everything's good, blah blah blah, you know, kind of how like we do. You know, sometimes, even in today's society, it's very difficult to share your struggles with people. And we go on to the tone and the mood of the poem. The poem starts off as very happy. So besides his clothing and his jewelry and everything that he's wearing, symbolizing his wealth and the way that he carried himself, as the poem goes on, there's a drastic change, especially in the last two sentences that I noticed. There was a drastic change in tone and mood, because the last two sentences are, and Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. Like, that's pretty self-explanatory, and that just shifts the whole mood to like, oh my gosh, like, what just happened? And you have shock, and you just have sadness and distress, and you know, it goes from very happy, very melancholy, and then it flows to the end of the sonnet, to the end, and it's like, well, dang. It was something that I honestly, personally didn't expect to happen because I've never read this poem before. And my first initial thoughts of this poem was that it was going to be about a man named Richard, of course, self-explanatory. That, I don't know if this guy is going to be good or bad or whatnot and stuff like that. I saw a little bit of foreshadowing in this poem where the word was is always used. It kind of gives you this eerie, unsettling feeling, and it's a foreshadowing of what happens at the end because he was this type of man. He was this type of man that would say good morning to everybody. He was always human when he talked. He was always quietly arrayed. He was all these things, which gives you an idea of, wait a minute, this person used to be alive. So what is going to happen to this person? Gives you that unsettling pit stomach feeling. At least for me it did. And I think all of this foreshadowing and personification, all the symbolism and everything ties into the whole theme of, which I believe to be suicide. I think that is the theme of this poem. You never know what somebody's going to go through. And you don't know if they're going through something. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, everybody has something. Everybody has their demons. And it doesn't matter how rich you are, you're not always happy. And it doesn't mean that you're happy either, because money doesn't equal happiness. There is no correlation whatsoever. Somebody can have the smallest amount of money and have just bread for dinner and be the happiest person in the world. Or, vice versa. The ones who are the strongest and seem the happiest most of the time can also be the people that are struggling the most. And you wouldn't notice it because everybody has that mask on, he had this mask on of, hey, good morning. My day is going wonderful. How are you? But people, even in their envy, didn't realize that he was going through some stuff and he felt alone and he didn't share any of that. Or maybe he did. I don't know. The poem doesn't really dive into what he actually shares, just that he was human when he talked. So I think he may have shared a little bit of his humanism with everybody, but he kind of kept a little his guard up, so to speak, because you don't want to talk about everything to everyone, because it is a lot. You can struggle with depression and so many personal issues, and not even your own spouse or child or anybody close to you would know. And I actually have personal experience in this because I have been suicidal before. I have harmed myself before. I have gone through depression. I've gone through postpartum depression. I've gone through so many things. It's very difficult to share the deepest, darkest parts of yourself because you're scared. You're terrified of what the other person might think or do or say. And you feel some sort of shame behind it, because of society standards are like, you can't talk about it, you're not allowed to. And I believe that's very harmful to people who are suffering in silence. And I know if I had had the therapist that I have now years ago, or anybody, or a support system years ago too, I would probably done different things. Like, I think my life would have been easier to handle, but I am where I am today because of everything that I've gone through, and I really relate to the theme and how this poem really touches on human emotion, and just in the end we're all human beings no matter what, and you just never know what somebody's going to go through. I hope I kind of explained everything. I really don't, because I'm not very great at wording things correctly, but that is my oral presentation, and hopefully this turned out okay. It's interesting because there's a perspective of the audience towards Richard. The people of the town think that he is like the ultimate goal, so to speak. The ultimate, like, he is amazing, he is awesome, like he is who I want to be when I grow up. But in the end, all of the imagery, all of the symbolism, everything just ties into the whole theme of basically, maybe it's not just suicide that the theme is about, but basically the whole concept is we're all only human. The humanism of it all. I think I'm going to change my theme. I think now that the theme is humanism, because we're all just human in the end. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. So